So in today's video we're going to be restoring this locomotive. This is a EMD gp9 and kind of interesting how I wound up with this thing. It all started, I think it was in June or maybe it was July by that point, I don't know. I was at the model train and slot car shop, and as you guys probably know, I bought all those bags full of locomotives, and I bought the bag this one was in specifically for this shell. After I'd gotten it home, I discovered that the paint job was actually really poorly done. Things like this, like the paint was actually spilled over. Somebody had painted this themselves and they just had not done a very good job with the vents. So at that point I decided I was going to make it part of my Unstoppable consist. And a lot of people were kind of like, oh no, don't do that, it's cool. It's I think they said this is a farm rail paint scheme. I don't know a lot about it, to be honest, but so I was like, okay, let's try giving this thing a fair shot. I'm going to see if I can fix it up myself, just the cosmetic details. So I took a knife and I scraped away all the excess paint, I resoldered the handrails, and afterwards I was actually pretty happy. I mean, it's not perfect, but I basically got the cosmetic detail to a level that I was good with. So anyways, the body is actually out of I think it was a Santa Fe locomotive. That's one of the ones that got painted up to look like one of the trains from the movie Runaway Train. So this one got the interior and motor, but that one didn't run. So this basically is a new body that doesn't work. So we need to get this one working, and hopefully we'll have this new locomotive, because this thing is just so cool. I'd love to get working headlights on it and stuff too. Anyways, let's begin. Just getting the shell to fit on this body was no small task. The whole inside was filled with cork. I don't know who had done that. I don't know how a motor fit in it, but anyways, that itself was not terribly easy. You'll notice this is an Athearn locomotive, which I've always liked Athearn locomotives quite a bit. I've always considered them to be quite well built. I have no clue what the problem with this is. I noticed the motor turns freely, so I'm going to assume this is a transmission issue. So we're going to take apart each of the trucks and see if we can find the issue. It's probably a large piece of hair caught somewhere in one of them. We're going to pull this out. This locomotive has clearly been run a lot too. You can tell because the commutator is really worn down. So this was probably run for hours and hours on end. I mean, when you're buying used, you really never know what the owner was doing with it. Probably know it could have been a display locomotive in a hobby shop running on a daily basis. In the grand scheme of things, this all actually, it's not very scraped though, so whoever did own it did evidently take decent care of it. Ha, there's a hidden clip here. I mean, the problem is probably only with one of the trucks, but it's probably just a good idea to take them both apart, because I really want to lubricate this thing carefully, and I want it to run really smoothly, as best as I can get it. Athearns usually are not too hard to restore. Once you figure out how to work on an Athearn, they're actually very easy to work on. This whole thing should in theory come apart. Oh yeah, sorry, I forgot a small detail. Both these trucks need to pop out. So I've just actually noticed one thing that could be a minor issue. These square things, those are bearings, and they're supposed to be in these metal areas. That one's not. I'm not sure if it's just because I took this apart, but there's always a chance that the wheels are not gauged properly. These Athearn wheels, you can't actually pull them apart, so I'm not sure. Maybe somebody else tried to see like that. They can pop right off. They're not necessarily supposed to, it's just you can. You know, the inside of this engine actually seems pretty clean. I'm not sure if this is a broken gear or not. Interesting. Well, let's have a look at the other one. I should check to see if the motor actually does in fact turn over, because it would be really bad if we went taking this whole thing apart just to discover it was the motor that was the problem. It all seems relatively okay, actually. The only concern I have is the wheels. So maybe the problem is with the motor. I am noticing the motor is mounted a bit unusually. I'm not sure if maybe somebody did something on that. We'll just have to wait and see, I guess. So we're gonna have a go at testing the motor. I can't exactly remember how these things get power, so I'm just gonna... Here we go. Oh, wow. Does this come out? Yeah, it does. Yeah, so all that noise was just being created by those. We'll see how well it turns over once we remove that. That's exactly what I was hoping for. So the conclusion that I've come to is that the motor's completely fine, therefore the problem must be somewhere in the trucks. And since there was no major areas of hair in the actual, motor, bearings, gear worm, I'm going to assume that this truck was just not assembled right, and that's why the motor wouldn't turn, because the motor seems to be okay, so yeah, we'll just have to see. Now we're going to assemble the second truck, and we'll just put that little gear back on. There are a few small pieces of hair, again, nothing major. And clip those together. Actually, that just reminded me, I forgot to put the clip on this one. Fair enough. That looks like it's a bit bent. This is the thing that the bearing goes in, so I'm going to see, maybe if the wheel doesn't fit in. Okay, the wheel doesn't want to fit in, so clearly something bent this piece of metal. I'm going to try pushing it down, see if we can kind of bend it back into place. If we can do that, then that might have actually been the problem, because that would be putting an incredibly large amount of force on the wheel, and it only takes a couple small things like that to completely stop a motor from turning over. I mean, Athearn makes good motors, but they can't be impervious to high levels of stress. Okay, this one doesn't want to turn. So clearly we have some troubleshooting we have to do. I decided to take off one of the wheel bearings, and I'm discovering maybe these bearings had a lot more dirt in them than I thought. See, they didn't turn too badly, but I'm discovering like there's a lot of hair and stuff in this one, and that makes me wonder if maybe all the bearings have hair and stuff in them, and that's why this thing does not want to turn. So this one bearing had a lot more dirt in it than I thought. And the wheel was extremely dirty, so I decided I'm going to take apart every single wheel and bearing, clean it up properly, and hopefully that will solve what our problem is. I've just put one of the wheels back in. I have to say that this thing runs about 100 times better now that it has proper lubricant in it, and yeah, clean wheels. So clearly there's some kind of grease I couldn't see in this thing. Some kind of weird green grease. And it's kind of stuck everything together, and that's why this one is not working. But that doesn't mean it's impossible that its lubricating properties might have still been working, which is probably why I wasn't able to tell. But with all the, with every gear in this thing being lubricated with this type of grease, it can add up to enough to possibly seize the motor. It's already a lot better than it was. We'll see how this one goes. Fortunate that the motor in this thing is not burnt out. Yeah, folks, I think we have our problem, which is that those bearings were just full of dirt, because this is now turning with ease. So, I'm going to do the same on the other truck, just in case, even though I was able to get it to turn pretty smooth, because I want this thing to run well. Okay, so we're now going to start reassembling our locomotive here. just one thing that's kind of important, you need to make sure this contact goes over this other one, and it will, if you don't do that, it may not make a firm electrical connection, and you'll have all sorts of issues later on. Well, that's fair enough. Now we just need to get the other one back together. And just as before, we're going to put this piece on. That's... Well, as you can see, it does have that light fixture over it, which, you know, kind of gets in your way. Okay, so I've got that on. Now I just need to wiggle the top plate over it like so. I think I got it. Okay, there's a problem. This truck, there's a little hole that the truck is supposed to fit into, and it's not currently. There we go. Got it right. Now when we turn this, it seems to turn very, very smooth. Before I could only turn it back and forth. So we'll put the shell back on, and we'll see if this thing works now. Recall the shell having some troubles fitting on before. Can't remember if I did any adjustments last time or if I just put it on with brute force. I'm going to assume the latter. Okay, I think that's on. Yeah, it's on. Okay. Locomotive rebuilt. It's now time for the famous moment. Will she run or will she not run? I would like you guys to keep in mind that I bought this thing for essentially $1, so... Nada. Oh. Oop, we've got a short. That's a short. I swear this thing turned over at least once. So at first I thought the motor might have been what was causing the shorts, but then I noticed this. So the power comes in through here, it goes to this light, and then the output of the light goes to here. So these are both different currents. If you apply just a tiny bit of pressure, you've got a short right there. So it's a very odd design, so I'm going to try sticking some electrical tape right there. And we'll see if that will allow our engine to run now. Okay, let's see if she can run for real this time. Let's try giving her a lock. Oh, there we go! Yeah! So I guess that was what was causing that short, was that weird light fixture. What a great looking engine. On our display panel here, you can see the motor is doing some weird stuff. That should be somewhat consistent. The voltage is doing something similar, but I mean, again, I bought this thing for $1, so yeah, that's pretty amazing for a locomotive that only cost $1. Let's see how she performs on low voltages. Maybe this is a bad idea. I should... Yeah. Okay, I was afraid that I was just about to say I think it might stall out there. Of course it did. Let's see if we can get her moving again. Yeah, okay. Let's see, can we get her to start on a low voltage? Eight volts. Okay, she can kind of work with 8 volts. Let's see if we bring to 12 volts, right on the nose. So 12 volts seems to be about the minimum this thing operates consistently well. Well, actually no, the voltage has dropped down ever since it started moving. Now it's operating on roughly 9 volts, so I guess it can run on 9 volts once it gets moving. I'll just open her up and see in the kind of 16 range. Yeah, so it obviously operates best on about 16 volts of power, but still, it's pretty impressive for a locomotive that costs $1. So that's it for today's video. I hope you guys enjoyed. I certainly enjoyed getting this one working again. It's just such a great addition to the layout, and I think it just looks awesome. Self a Knife's new home up on the shelf.